Dr. Bruce Bode, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Scott.
I've appreciated having you on our advisory board for, I think, about 16 years as our pump advisor.
Yes.
And why don't you tell us what changes you've seen that you're excited about?
Well, you just heard Al Mann speak, and I've worked with Al since 1985. He is really the father of insulin pump therapy, and he miniaturized pump therapy, and so his vision was to cure diabetes with an artificial device. And I think we're right on the verge of a cure, because now we have an insulin pump that delivers continuous rapid-acting insulin very precisely. And then whenever you need to eat, you can bolus insulin with each meal, or in his case, you can inhale it if you wanted to. But clearly, it's the gold standard for basal bolus therapy, which is the standard of treatment for type 1 diabetes. But now what's happened is not only do we have smart pumps where you gets a meter reading, calculates your correction dose, asks you what you're eating, you put your grams of carbohydrate in there, and then it calculates the dose minus any active insulin on board. So this is a remarkable product, these smart pumps. But what's been missing all these times is continuous sensing. Al Mann, in his early days, all he did is spend money trying to find continuous sensing, and he was able to locate a sensing person that he hired, John Massatoro, who was able to develop the what is known as the MiniMed continuous sensing system device, also known as Guardian Real-Time, and that recently has gotten approved this last month in combination with pump therapy. And so we have spent the last year and a half doing trials, initially a pilot study, followed by a multi-center, 7-center study comparing sensor-augmented pump therapy to standardized therapy with the most modern pump in the world called the 715 pump, all with bolus wizard calculators and everything. And what's remarkable is when you get people to go on a sensor and they have a pump, all they do is have to look at their pump at any second of the day. They can see the reading. They can go back and look at 24-hour graph to 3-hour graph. They can look at each individual blood sugar over time. And so they can look, and this is a 24-hour graph, where they've been. And
right there on the pump.
Right there in the pump. Shows you exactly where you've been. And so the advantage of this, and it's just a sensor sent in, tiny little sensor. You know, the engineers made a transmitter to get it to the market quickly. This will all be miniaturized in the future, sensors, but tiny little sensor that measures the glucose, actually every 10 seconds, updates it every 5 minutes, so you get an updated reading every 5 minutes. All you have to do, we encourage everyone to use your bolus wizard and use these readings with an adjunct to glucose monitoring to control glucose. Our initial pilot study showed a 1-point drop in A1C. This looks like it's going to be confirmed, at least in our section of the 7-center trial. It's looking very good, the data on it. People actually become addicted to this. They look at this device 20 to 40 times a day. And the ones who pay attention to it do much better. So finally we can get people to near goal, being A1Cs under 7 without hypoglycemia, and that's the ultimate goal. And as Al had mentioned, and others, Earl Hirsch, Michael Brownlee, really what matters is decreasing variability in glucose. You want to prevent postprandial hyperglycemia or the up and downs, reducing the oxidative stress, which we think is so important. And this clearly will reduce oxidative stress via decreased glycemic variability, we assume. We haven't measured oxidative stress in our trials, but we are measuring variability, and it appears that's also down. People are fluctuating a lot less.
So that graph you showed me was the insulin infusing or the blood sugar readings?
That's currently the blood sugar readings, and that's the blood sugar readings between target. This target here is set at 80 to 240, but you can customize the target, and when you cross that threshold, it will alert you, and you can and you can put it on a snooze if you're high and you know you're high. Say, I want to be notified again in an hour if I'm still above 240, or if you're less than 80, say, well, I want to notify you in 20 minutes.
So the pump is connected with a tube to your abdomen.
Yes.
And then this is attached someplace else.
Someplace else, and it's updated continuously at transmitter. And Al named his company MiniMed, but this is not a miniaturized transmitter, but that's what came out. This is a first-generation transmitter.
Is this the one that just got FDA approval?
Just got FDA approval.
So it's for sale now?
It's for sale right now. Transmitter plus the pump.
So it's a combo deal?
It's a combination deal. You have a 722 or a 522 paradigm real-time pump with a real-time sensor. So this is a paradigm real-time sensor is what it's called.
So how much does it cost?
I don't really know. I've only done clinical research. Apparently it's based at $1,000 for the sensor and 10 sensors or something, and the pump is the standardized pump rate, which is whatever it is, $5,000 to $6,000. I'm not sure.
So someone in my office just got the generation before this that uses the BD meter, and then it goes to the insulin wizard, and then you press OK. Is this very similar to that?
Yes, very similar. You got to calibrate it at least every 12 hours. You can calibrate it manually, or you calibrate it with the BD meter, paradigm link meter that goes into the pump, and you calibrate it, and then you accept it, and then anytime you use your readings, you can calibrate it accordingly.
Oh, so you still test with the BD meter, which goes via infrared
Yes.
into the pump, which stores everything.
Yeah. It's very important that this is an adjunctive to glucose finger stick testing, that if you need to make a treatment change, you're supposed to test and verify that that's where you are before you test. It's not a replacement for finger sticks.
How about for eating and treating? Do you have to do a finger stick for
Obviously,
meal?
you should always finger stick before a meal, find out where you are, but the benefit is you see trends here. You know for the first time in your life where you are at that one time, what direction you're going in, and how fast you're going. And to have that, it helps you dramatically. So if you're coming into a meal and you're 100 going low, you might wait till the meal before you bolus. But if you come into a meal and you're 100 rising, you might say, I'm going to go ahead and bolus now, I'm already going up. I'm not worried about hypoglycemia.
So that's really the paradigm shift, is
Yeah.
knowing if you're going up or going down.
Yeah, no question about it. It's a paradigm shift. I think that's why Al was involved at that time when they called it a paradigm. They called it a paradigm pump because it's going to be a paradigm shift in diabetes treatment.
Well, some people might say, gee, I have to test anyway. Why not just test twice in 10 minutes? So then you'll know if you're going up or going down.
Obviously, you can never test 288 times a day or whatever. Legitimately, you might be able to test 15 times a day, but that's very difficult. Some of my patients do that to know where they are. But you really want to know where you are at the time, what direction, and then you can retrospectively download this, look at your trends, and make smart decisions on what you need to adjust. Is it your basal? Is it your carb to insulin ratio? Is it your correction factor? Is it your target? And then you can adjust that and really fine tune. I think this is all in baby steps toward eventual goal. As when Al Mann founded this company, he wanted to cure diabetes with an artificial device, whether it was implantable or external. He wanted to get it done no matter what it took. And I think we're on the verge. So this system you see now will be modified in the future, which will be modified in the future. And I really think someday will truly be closed loop, that you're going to have them talking to each other. So every morning you wake up right at 100. With a meal, you might take a bolus and no titration, just bolus. But then the pump will kick in to make sure you're flat right after a meal and adjust it. So I think that's the that is where we're going to be in 3 to 5 years. We will be there. The vision's there, and I think we certainly will be there.
And so the dream is, if you stave off the blood sugar rise, you stave off the complications, and you're still diabetic, but you don't have the symptoms of diabetes anymore.
Very much so. It's in the state of other diseases, that you have the disease, but you never get the complications from that disease, and you lead a totally normal life. You still have to wear a device that senses your glucose. You have to take insulin by one fashion or another, but they talk to each other and they normalize you, so you lead a completely normal life without any diabetes complications. And that's the dream. That's the dream of people with diabetes, or parents and family members of diabetes. They obviously want their person with diabetes to lead a normal and healthy life.
The sets have changed in those years. Do you think we've perfected the infusion set?
I think infusion sets have become easier and simpler, and there's a lot more infusion sets hopefully coming. You still have the ability to crimp a set, and unfortunately that has not been solved. It needs to be solved that you never get a crimp set or a dislodge set. We're getting better and better, but because of that, you can't just go on a pump without monitoring. You have to monitor, because if you're high and you don't come down, you assume it's a set problem. You got to troubleshoot it, take insulin by syringe, or change out your set. It's extremely important.
So show us how the real-time sensor, does it go on like a set?
Identical to a set, it's put in with an insertion device, very similar to what's called a silhouette set. So it goes in at an angle with an insertion device, and then you
pull that out.
Pull that out, but I'm having trouble pulling it because I can't see it. But you pull it out, and then you reconnect this, and it's all waterproof. So this is a waterproof device.
Oh, that can be disconnected for showering?
Yes.
So you disconnect your pump and this?
No,
and
you can just jump in the shower with this. It's not an issue.
Where does this pigtail thing hang?
This pigtail hangs. You can go under your underwear, or you can tape it down. So you can tape it down with tape or whatever.
Okay, so it goes on just as easy as the pump.
Yes, very much so.
Is it the same size cannula?
It's very similar. It's actually a smaller cannula than it's very small. Al, you don't know what size cannula this is, but it's quite small. It's you can barely see it. It's more like a 28 gauge or less, but I'm guessing at that. But you can barely see that into the cannula of a sensor, which is really an electrode, coated membrane.
It's not receiving fluid.
No, it does no fluid at all. It's just measuring interstitial glucose, which correlates with capillary glucose, but there's a lag, mainly postprandial lag, or when it's rapidly changing.
Have they decided how much the lag is, or is it different in each person?
It's different in each person.
Maybe 15 minutes?
Yes. It can be. The lag in the fasting state can be almost nothing, but more like 10 minutes to up to 15 minutes if it's rapidly changing. But it's usually a standard lag is under 10 minutes.
So it's similar to alternate site testing. If you test your arm, that's a lag.
When you look at it, it's identical to alternate site testing. Same type of thing. But on the arm, you aren't getting as much blood flow, so the abdomen probably has a little more blood flow than that, but it's very similar to alternate site testing. So if you're rapidly changing, you can have a discrepancy between your finger stick and your interstitial reading. But if you're in a steady state, it should be fine. The mean absolute relative difference of these sensors is approaching under 15% now in our trial. So that's quite good. That's very good.
That's very good.
And as you know, meters, they can only say you're plus or minus 20%. But meters are probably better than that, but they can't really say it. That's what they say. So we're approaching in our trials, and these are trials multiple sensors, plus or minus 15%. There were some trials here reported, with various sensors out there.
Now, this has a battery in it, the sensor?
Sensor has a battery, and it's, and I don't know the battery per se, but this seems to, I don't know the exact specifics of that, so I'd be guessing.
So the pump is the controller for that?
Yes. Pump does all the controllers, it receives all the information, it updates it. You can set your alarms in the pump and everything. You download the pump, it saves all your meal doses, your sensor readings, anything you do is all in the pump, and it's all downloaded through infrared.
I was talking with someone about the Dexcom device, and it's not connected to the pump. And one mom was saying she could stand on the sidelines of her daughter's soccer game and be seeing her daughter's blood sugar readouts. And I thought that was pretty innovative.
Yes.
This would be a whole different...
Yes, this is a device that, but you're right, it's transmitted so the person, it's I think within a 10-foot radius. It tracks the data, then reconnects. But you can always look at it and see it. So obviously, if a child has it on at night, obviously the parents would like to know, so they have to use an alarm, but it'll alarm. So if the child doesn't wake up, you hear the alarm.
On the alarm?
And it would signal what was going on.
What about a person that doesn't want to be on a pump but wants the sensor?
I think obviously Dexcom has a device, Navigator has one, hopefully coming out this year. Medtronic has approval for their Guardian RT, and you'll see devices similar. I think you'll see hopefully transmitters gone in the future. They're going to miniaturize it further, make it easier and easier devices to carry. So Medtronic has retrospective CGMS, Gold, but they also have Guardian RT that's approved. And hopefully they're going to go to another version in the future, miniaturized and more custom user-friendly. So you don't have to be on a pump to get real-time sensing.
But this is the first one.
This is the first one.
This is for sale now. Someone goes to their doctor.
Yes, you can get it prescribed. Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
A little bit of a different topic. I wanted to ask you about Simlin.
Yeah.
And its use in insulin-dependent diabetes, pump use.
Obviously, with Simlin, it's a drug amylin's missing in type 1. It's absolutely deficient. So obviously, type 1s have trouble controlling postprandial rise. Our subcutaneous rapid-acting insulin isn't quick enough to control a postprandial rise unless you take it 20 minutes before you eat, and then it's still not optimal. So the benefit of giving Simlin is it slows the stomach down. Slows it down. It suppresses hepatic glucose production. It controls overeating. So Simlin in combination with bolusing with rapid-acting insulin or even regular insulin shuts down postprandial rise. So that's the benefit of Simlin. Controls appetite. People, type 1s, if you're overweight, you lose weight. If you're normal weight, you don't lose weight, but you prevent the postprandial rise. So you don't have to be heavy to use Simlin. It can be used for anyone. It's just replacing another hormone that's been absent. Unfortunately, you have to take Simlin with each meal. You have to take it by a separate injection. And ideally, you'd love to have a dual chamber pump. We'd love to have somebody make it. We don't know if anybody's going to do it, but that's ideal.
You can't mix it with the insulin yet.
You can't mix with insulin. So ideally, when you get into true artificial delivery and you want everything done for you and no bolusing, no touching, you're going to need a dual chamber pump or similar type of infusion. Hopefully somebody will step forward and do it someday. So maybe Al, when he gets older, in his retirement age, he'll say, I'm going to go make a dual chamber pump for you. That's what we need.
Are you using someone with your patients?
Yes, sure, certainly. No
Is there
question.
any type 1s that shouldn't be taking it? I mean, should everyone be taking it?
No, I think if a type 1's at goal without much postprandial rise, they have less brittle diabetes, you don't need it. But if you have brittle diabetes, you're up and down, you should consider it. If you have hypoglycemic unawareness, history of severe hypoglycemia, it's relatively to absolutely contraindicated because people take Simlin, they're often taking too much insulin, you got to decrease insulin and balance it. It can be very threatening. So it's relatively contraindicated to absolutely contraindicated people passing out, needing help from low sugars.
Have you found your patients need, I think they say it's 10 units per meal, which is no titration like Al was saying?
Well, for type 2s, it's 10 units going to 22 units with each meal, but for type 1s, you start at 2.5 units. 3 to 5 days later, you go to 5 units. 3 to 5 days to a week later, as tolerated, you go to 7.5 units, and eventually you end at 10 units. But you don't just start somebody at 10 units.
Well, how do you know if 10 is too much?
They get too much nausea. Too much nausea shuts them down.
Okay.
And so that's why. So you dose it to where they can tolerate it and leave it there. Don't go above 10 units per se. And unless you're really having trouble, that would be off-label use, but that would be more in the type 2 person overeating.
What else do you think is innovative that you think is going to be standard of care in the future? Anything you're prescribing now?
Well, I think in the hospital setting, I think there's no question closed-loop systems will be there. We have an FDA approval of our Glucomander, came this past Thursday, closing the loop in the hospital, IV and sub-Q. That'll help us.
That's a mini-med device too? No.
It's not a mini-med device. We talked to Al Mann a lot about it, and he helped us a lot. But that's a device that just came through the FDA, owned by a company called Glucotech.
Okay.
But it was developed by our team. And so we have that. And other things coming out, as you know, pulmonary insulin, clearly make it user-friendly. We have appetite suppressant drugs in the future coming out. Incretin mimetics, drugs like Bode, remarkable in type 2 diabetes, addressing the overeating and the rapid stomach emptying. It's very important in the first phase insulin that's been absent. So we have so much happening in diabetes. It's a great time to be in diabetes. If you're born with diabetes now, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. You'll be fine.
With the Bode, can you say a few words about where you prescribe it in terms of their progression of the type 2?
Bode is used to give insulin with each meal. Bode is used to release insulin with each meal. It's indicated with metformin, sulfonylurea, or combination thereof. It does work well in monotherapy. It works well with basal insulin. So it does very well, and it does extremely well. So.
And they're using that in your
type
practice?
2. In type 2. The only type 2, not type 1.
Right.
Yeah, only in type 2. So it's used in people with type 2 diabetes who are not achieving goal and either on monotherapy or dual therapy. There are studies on TZDs that have been abstract form, looks very good, but not yet indicated. So Bode is a remarkable drug for type 2s that can't get to goal. They're having weight issues, postprandial rise, and so it does remarkably well in that group of patients.
Dr. Bode, this has been terrific.
Okay, well, thank
Thanks
you
for
so much,
coming down.
Scott. Thank you.